A trader in Lagos sells goods to a buyer in Nairobi. Money changes hands, but it does not move the way you think. It does not fly straight from Nigeria to Kenya. It flies first to New York. It converts into dollars. It pays a fee. It waits. Then, and only then, does it come back down to Africa, lighter than when it left. For decades, this was simply how business worked. Quiet, invisible, expensive, and almost nobody outside of banking ever asked why. Now a new system is quietly rewriting that journey. It is called PAPSS, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. And its goal is bigger than convenience. It wants to cut the dollar out of the room entirely. Here is the old problem, in plain English. When a business in one African country pays a business in another African country, the transaction usually does not happen directly. Instead, both currencies first convert into a foreign currency, almost always the US dollar. That dollar payment routes through banks outside the continent, called correspondent banks. Each stop along that chain takes a cut. Each stop adds delay. A simple payment between two neighboring countries could take days and lose value at every step, just to round trip through a financial system thousands of miles away. Multiply that across an entire continent of trade, and the cost becomes staggering. Billions of dollars a year, by some estimates, lost simply moving money between African nations that share a border, a market, and sometimes a language. That is the system Afreximbank, the African Export-Import Bank, set out to break. PAPSS was first announced by Afreximbank and the African Union at an African Union summit in Niamey, Niger, in July 2019, as a key tool for powering the African Continental Free Trade Area. It officially launched in January 2022. So how does it actually work? Picture two central banks instead of two countries shouting prices at each other through a translator in New York. PAPSS is a centralized system for processing, clearing, and settling cross-border trade payments directly among African countries. A business in Ghana wants to pay a supplier in Kenya. It issues a payment instruction to its local bank, which sends that instruction through PAPSS via the country's central bank, routing it to the beneficiary's bank account in Kenya. No dollar detour, no New York layover. The Ghanaian cedi effectively talks to the Kenyan shilling directly in something close to real time. Behind the scenes, the system is even smarter than a single payment. PAPSS uses a multilateral net settlement framework which consolidates payments between countries throughout the day and settles only the final balance rather than processing every single transaction separately. Think of it like a group of friends who owe each other money after a trip. Instead of 5 separate transfers back and forth, they just calculate who owes what at the very end and settle once. PAPSS settles those net balances among African currencies daily, with central banks resolving anything left over. That single design choice is the quiet revolution. Fewer conversions, fewer fees, far less reliance on a currency that has nothing to do with the trade actually taking place. And it is not staying small. By the middle of 2025, PAPSS was operating in 16 African countries, with 15 financial institutions and 14 national payment switches connected to it. Central banks from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and several other nations were already plugged into the network. What started as a pilot is becoming plumbing. Why does this matter so much? Because for as long as African trade has depended on the dollar to move between African neighbors, African economies have been quietly exposed to decisions made far outside the continent. a US interest rate hike, a dollar shortage, a foreign bank tightening its risk appetite. Any of these could choke trade between two countries that, on paper, had nothing to do with the United States at all. PAPSS does not eliminate the dollar from global trade. Africa still needs it to buy oil, machinery, and imports from outside the continent. But for trade within Africa, between African businesses, PAPSS is steadily removing the need to ask a foreign system for permission. Its backers have openly tied the system's long-term ambition to deeper monetary integration, even floating the eventual emergence of a single African currency and an African central bank as the project matures. That is a quiet but enormous claim. A continent of 54 countries trading with each other in their own currencies, settling balances among themselves without routing through Wall Street first. Of course, the system is not finished. Building it out still means investing in infrastructure like secure data centers and reliable internet in countries where digital payment systems are less developed, and it means harmonizing banking, tax, and anti-money laundering rules across very different regulatory systems. Some national payment systems were not built for real-time settlement and need upgrading to even connect. Adoption among smaller businesses is still catching up, with awareness campaigns and pilot programs working to bring everyday traders into a system most of them have never heard of. But the direction is set. In 2023, countries across the Caribbean community even began piloting PAPSS to facilitate trade with Africa, with Afreximbank designating the Caribbean as a sixth region of Africa. A payment system built to solve an African problem is now being eyed as a blueprint for the wider global South. So think back to that trader in Lagos and that buyer in Nairobi. Under the old system, their money took a detour through a country neither of them does business with, just to reach each other. Under the new one, it does not have to anymore. This is not a war fought with armies or headlines. It is fought in settlement files and clearing systems. In the seconds it takes a payment to move from one African bank to another. And piece by piece, transaction by transaction, it is loosening a grip the dollar has held over African trade for generations. The money still moves. It just does not have to go to New York to get there anymore. If you like this story and want to know more about the companies, entrepreneurs, industries, scandals, and business empires shaping the African continent, hit like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.